Welcome to Cab Conversations on Brownfield, the content partnership with the Ohio Soybean Council. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner with us to check in for our final Cab Conversation of the season. Three of my favorite Ohio farmers in central Ohio, Bill Bayliss, in the northeastern part of the state, Jeff Magyar, and in the northwestern part of the state, Nathan Eckel. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us all season long. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Megan.
Let's just kind of check in. Jeff, we'll start with you. How are things looking in your area?
Dairy farm to the north has just started chopping corn silage, and a neighbor 3 or 4 miles northwest, I see they ran some beans, and we're planting wheat this morning where they ran the beans. Everything else is still 10 days away, except some very, very early bean varieties.
Bill, let's drop down and check the central part of the state.
Well, we've got beautiful weather, just as gorgeous as you could hope for. I see a lot of machinery sitting in the barnyards being prepped or has been prepped. I think the fellows are anxious to get started, but right here in my neighborhood, I'd say it's at least 10 days before the first beans will come off, and we've got some beans that's green with just a couple sprinklings of yellow, so they're a month away yet. So I was hoping for an early fall, but I don't know if we're going to be late or not, and Mother Nature always rules, but we're anxious to get started.
I feel like we can make as many plans as we want, but ultimately we are not the final decision maker when it comes to getting in the field. Nathan, let's check in with you in the northwestern part of the state.
Yeah, here in the northwest, much like Bill's got, down there, we're beautiful weather, as you can see behind me, beautiful skies, and but we have been a little cooler this year. We're hoping to chop corn silage here this next week. Been looking at some corn, and we're about half milk line on the kernel, so we're getting close, but this corn just keeps hanging on. Beans, we're probably 10 days to 2 weeks out on a good majority of the beans. There's a few further ahead, a few quite a bit behind. We do have a lot of double crop beans, as we talked in the last cab conversation. Those are all looking good around here. I went to a field day here about 2 weeks ago at OSU's research farm in Hoytville, Ohio. And they keep track of the, weather data and things like that. And I found it interesting that there at Hoytville, they said we're about 300 GDUs behind average, but we're only actually down in Hoytville, and rainfall varies throughout this area quite a bit, depending on where you're located. But we're only about 1.5 inches behind normal on rainfall, which is kind of interesting in my opinion, for as long as it was dry. But I think that's why we're seeing this corn hold on for as long as we did. A lot of corn got sprayed with a fungicide, and we're also quite a bit behind on GDUs.
How much do you think the smoke coming in impacted the GDUs, specifically thinking about your part of the state? I know you guys were the first time we checked in, where we could see the smoke issues that you have been having.
Yeah, we don't really know what the smoke really impacted, except for, soybeans, a lot of their productivity is derived from sunlight and length of days. And, we had so many of those foggy days. I don't know, it could have been a benefit to the soybeans in a way, in the fact that, they really weren't stressed as much. And, all plants need CO2 to really photosynthesize. They need sunlight and CO2. So I don't know if that, played a factor, good or bad. It definitely probably prolonged this corn a little bit just because of the GDUs. It didn't get the sunlight that we needed. We really had roughly a week to 14 days, 2 weeks in there, depending on where you were at, how far north you were, that dealt with the smoke. And we really won't see the benefits or the negative factors of that here till we get into the field.
Let's talk a little bit about challenges throughout the growing season. I know we're 10 to 14, maybe even further for some guys getting ready to get in the field for harvest. Talk to me a little bit about weed pressure or disease pressure. What have been some of the biggest challenges you faced so far this growing season? Bill, let's start with you.
Well, to finish on the smoke, now my son-in-law had a unique idea, I thought, but it's valid. We've complained about sulfur, lack of sulfur since all the coal burning stoves and everything kind of went out of existence. But that smoke might have given us some free sulfur. The trade-off is, like Nathan said, sunlight effects and so forth. But other than that, our beans grew slow. I think across the whole state, I heard the other guys talk about with the dry weather and cooler weather in June. Now they look good. The weeds finally, as I drive around looking at our fields, we're all clean top. I know there was weeds earlier that we had to spray the second time, but I think the weed controls come in. The beans seem to be maybe a foot shorter than a normal year in height. However, they seem to be potted pretty good. So those are all those experiences. Pods is still what makes beans, and even a 4-bean pod versus a 3-bean pod helps out. So beans are a wild card. It's hard to make a yield. Corn, I can pretty well count and come up with what I got coming, and I think we've got a good corn crop coming. Beans, at this stage, I'd say we're average.
Jeff, let's check in with you. I know you had some challenges getting crops planted this year as well. What have been some of the things that you've noticed throughout the growing season?
We got things planted earlier than normal, and then we got dry. And I was just last week talking to Horatio at OSU because never seen white mold so bad in this area in certain spots. And he said those plants, when they grew, they got about a foot tall, and then they stalled. When it was so dry, the white mold spores would have been very, very active on top of the ground. The dry weather wouldn't have hurt them. And then as soon as we got rain, there was an easy path for the spores to get into the plants. So I can see, I've seen more white mold damage driving around than ever. And the other thing I've noticed is it just went by a field. I haven't been by it in 2 weeks. Got some lamb's quarter just emerging through the canopy right now. So they must have come very late, and the spray had lost its residual and could have an issue with that.
Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, in the soybean side of things, our early planted beans, this was one of the first years that we started planting beans before corn this year. We made that switch, seeing some benefits to that. But on the downside, we did see those early planted bean fields had some frog eye leaf spot, which usually doesn't make it up this far north. Usually that's kind of a I-70 corridor type disease. Usually, but this year we did see some frog eye in our early beans. We did spray for those, and also in those fields we did see a lot of bean leaf beetle feeding on the leaves. We did spray with an insecticide on those beans. Now the later beans that we planted right in line with our corn, we did not see that pressure from insects and disease, so we did not spray those. So just about 300 acres of beans that we had early, we sprayed with a fungicide, and then also an insecticide to combat that. On the corn side of things, we have not historically sprayed with fungicide. This year we sprayed every acre, and I'm glad we did. There's some areas around here that definitely had tar spot, and you can tell the fields that did not get sprayed with fungicide. Tar spot is prevalent. Some northern corn leaf blight in here as well.
Nathan, as you think about being the first year where you planted beans before corn, knowing what you went through this growing season, is it something you would consider to do again, or do you need a couple of years to see if it works well for you before you make a decision to maybe switch a practice on your operation more permanently?
No, I think it's going to be a continuing practice. It seems like these fields that we're planting beans into, beans are a little more resilient. Corn, we talk all the time, corn cannot have a bad day. Beans are a little more resilient when it comes to that. So they can take a lot. And I think if we've got the right conditions, we're definitely going to roll the bean planter first before we get the corn planter out of the barn for sure.
As you guys look ahead, obviously, probably maybe waiting to see how things performed this year. What are some practices that you're thinking about already, or looking ahead to, or excited about in terms of products for 2024? Bill?
That's a new one. We went to the big candy show at Farm Science Review. We could see all kinds of machinery that we would like to have and no money to buy anything with. And they've got a lot of good technology that's amazing in the sprayers, primarily is my particular ballpark. If you could afford to buy one of those, and really I see a custom farming operation, lots of acres, they will pay their way. We don't have that many acres, so it's not really in our purchase plan in the near future. But I guess otherwise they're always coming out with new stuff. Then the big drone was interesting to everybody, where they can carry a couple 5-gallon cans of and spray really quite a few acres with it. So I didn't get to see the demonstration. I just seen them there and have read about them. But that 10 years ago, that'll never work. 5 years ago, that might work another 20 or 30 years. And now they're doing it. So I heard the one guy, I just stopped briefly at his display, and he was telling people that, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but basically he could spray anything they wanted. So it's amazing what progress keeps coming around the corner.
Steph, what are some things that you may be thinking about in terms of any types of management practices, or any types of those types of things to consider for the upcoming growing season?
We've got to find more different ways we can combat this white mold, because when it's bad, it can be 30-40% yield loss. And we've had different seed treatments, but watching food grades soybeans and looking at neighbors that don't have food grades, it's bad on everything this year in this area with early planted beans. But so no, that's going to be one of my biggest, try to do more research on what we can do to combat white mold.
Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, so this year on our farm, we really, we had some pretty decent money rolling into this year, and we made the decision that we were gonna try some high management types of things. So we looked at probably a half a dozen biological type products on our soybeans, because soybeans are while we do raise quite a bit of corn for corn silage and that, soybeans is really that's what we really grow around here, and we can grow them well. So really looking at biological and micro packs and things like that, we really run the gamut of different things. So I'm really anxious to get in the field to see what those different products did on these farms. With having the livestock side of things and the manure side, I think these, biologicals and micro packs really fit into our operation well. So I'm just trying to figure out which one really trips that trigger on this soybean yield type of thing. You can visually see the soybeans. They look a lot better. There's a lot of growth to those things, but till we get into the field with the combine and see what goes across this yield monitor, we won't really know. And I'm really excited to see what what those kinds of things can do for us.
I want to talk a little bit risk reward, I guess, or maybe just risk concerns, thinking about the upcoming year. We're at a point where we don't have a farm bill. It's probably going to see an extension. There's other concerns in terms of trade and those discussions. When you look ahead to the next year, where are your biggest concerns as a producer? Nathan?
Yeah, so here in particular, from a political standpoint, we just had a revaluation of all the farmland, and basically property values were revalued. And in our neck of the woods, our property values went up by roughly 77%. Now, obviously, our property taxes are not going to go up by that, but we're pretty high. Our county here in Wood County in the state of Ohio is the highest taxed county in the state when it comes to property values. And I would say we're average when it comes to our corn and bean yields. So that's one of the biggest factors I see around here, moving forward. As far as the farm bill goes and things like that, I would really, in my personal opinion, that farm safety net with the crop insurance is something as a younger producer. That's something that I want to see, because we're in a growth mode here on our farm, with where we're at, young families and things like that. And I would like to see that safety net be a little more robust. That's where I would like to see that money go to, if you will.
Yeah. I'm going to have you move just a little bit closer.
Like Nathan, our most soil values in our county with reevaluation. So we're all waiting to hear from the auditor what that's going to do to our tax bills. The other thing that has me greatly concerned is interest, and the interest rate is going to affect things tremendously going forward, especially if it's not held where it's at. And also trade. China. I mean, that's the wild card. And if you have the perfect storm of bad things happening, if everything would align and go the wrong way.
How important is it? You bring up the trade question. We talk about China, and we saw this a couple of years ago, obviously, with what happened in that trade relationship, and then the fix, the temporary solution. How important is it for checkoff dollars to be invested to explore and build and develop and diversify markets? So all of our eggs aren't in one basket per se in terms of buyers and trading relationships. And I'll leave that open to whoever.
We're already at USB, which Bill and I are on. I mean, there's already our big focus is renewable diesel, more animal feeding. The whole beans are not going to be exported going forward like they are right now. Under construction, the soybean processing plants, there is basically 1/4 of the crop capacity being built right now. That is greatly going to change the way beans leave this country. It's going to be through soybean oil and soybean meal. And if that possibly is going to be walked off the farm with poultry and pork.
Bill, what are your biggest concerns as a producer looking ahead?
Yes, there's a lot of potential perfect storms coming, as Nathan said. And I know I've done a fair amount of international travel promoting our soybeans, and they quite often talk about we spent like 12 years in China from the first year we opened a soybean office in China to promote beans. It was like, I think it was 12 years before we sold them the first shipload of beans. You got to remember, China's where beans started from, but that market ballooned and been a major part of agriculture the last 10, 15 years. Now their economy appears to be really softening big time. I don't question the news that I'm hearing. And I've been spending quite a lot of my time recently in travels over there, going to a smaller country called Nigeria. Their population is going to be, they say, within 10 years will be the third largest populated country in the world. And it's a young population, still having babies, kids, still growing. That is, and they are very protein deficient. So bottom line is that that's a great market, but they need their government stabilized. You know, it's a free government. It was an old British colony until I think 20 years ago. So it's a fairly new country in the life of a country. And they got to get stabilized, but lots of potential there. But as maybe China slows down, India's kind of in between, still growing a little, but we got to look bottom line at future potentials, as well as the European Union. They're the old standby, but they've kind of taken a strong stance against environmental perceptions. And perceptions is a key word, because they are very concerned about a lot of things that we think the United States growers are the best at. The challenge is letting them know that and verifying in their mind so their perception will favor us as their producer of choice versus maybe buying someplace else for a few cents or less. It's a big challenge.
Gentlemen, I have appreciated and have enjoyed spending and checking in with you monthly for the growing season. Any final thoughts before I let you go about the 2023 crop and maybe looking ahead? Bill, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is payday. We want to get the crop in. My biggest thought always in the fall like this is I know Mother Nature can throw us a curve and we can have a major challenge going forward. Right now, it looks wonderful. I'd just like to get going, get it in the bin. We've already got quite a bit of it priced forward at decent prices. Always missed the highest, but that's part of the marketing game. But just like to get harvest done. Thanks so much for spending time with us, Megan.
Thank you. Jeff, any final thoughts about this year and this crop?
Just want to thank you, Megan, for this opportunity and wish everyone a safe harvest.
Nathan, final word with you.
Yeah, it's truly been a pleasure working with you, Megan, and appreciate the opportunity to tell our story here from the Soybean Council side. And, I'm really looking forward to harvest. This is probably going to be one of our better years here in Northwest Ohio. As you mentioned before, I feel as though we're kind of in the garden spot, here in the Great Lakes region, at least in my particular area. So really looking forward to harvest. Hope everybody has a safe and happy harvest, and well wishes to everybody.
Bill, Jeff, Nathan, thank you all so much for joining us through this series of Cab Conversations. And here's wishing you a very safe and bountiful harvest. And I'm sure we'll check in over the phone once combines get rolling this fall. Have a great fall.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.
I'm Meghan Grebner with Cab Conversations on Brownfield, a content partnership with the Ohio Soybean Council.